Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. In the previous video, you learned how to define and configure a verified ID credential within your Entra ID. We explained the types of attestation and demonstrated it with a visitor pass credential. You also learned the steps to publish your credentials to the Entra Verified ID network. Now we move on to the most important part, using it in action. I'm Jazz Suri.
And I'm Yol Orbitz. We are product managers with the Micro Identity Product Group. In this second part, you will learn how to issue verified ID credentials and how to present them securely within your own application. We'll break down the technical details, allowing you to easily integrate the Microsoft Entra Verified ID into your own application. A verified ID solution has two core functions: issuing verified IDs and presenting them. This simplicity means you can easily integrate verified ID into your own custom portal. The issuance and presentation processes follow similar principles, and we will start with the issuance flow. If you missed the first part of this video where we explain how to define a verified ID credential, we recommend checking out that first. You can find the link in the description. The issuance flow begins by the user accessing a simple application, like an HTML page. Both the issuance and presentation flows are user-initiated. This means the user must take action to begin the process, typically by scanning a QR code or selecting a hyperlink. You cannot issue a credential to a user or verify credentials without their direct involvement. The user must always be the one to start the flow. In this demo, Alice made an appointment at Contoso, so Contoso sent her a link to get her visitor pass. She opens the link and confirms her identity using a one-time passcode sent to her mailbox. Her name and email address are pulled from Contoso Visitor Center system, and she only needs to upload a picture of herself that can be later used for face check. Finally, she selects the Get a Visitor Pass button to receive her visitor pass. Now let's break down the technical details. When Alice selects the Get a Visitor Pass button, a web API of your application receives the request and starts preparing a JSON payload document for the Verified ID request service. The request JSON payload contains information about your issuance request. You begin by getting the deed authority, the manifest URL, and the type of the credential. The deed authority is the unique identifier of your Verified ID service. The manifest parameter is the URL of the credential manifest document. The Authenticator app uses the manifest to render the credential and guide the user through the credential issuance. The type of the credential is you configure in the Verified ID rule definition, in this case, Visitor Pass. To get this information, go to Microsoft Entra Admin Center. From the menu, select Credentials, then select your credential. And then select Issue a Credential. Copy the value of the deed authority attribute, the credential type, and the manifest URL. Now, back to the JSON payload document. The registration element provides the name of your application. This information is not presented to the user during the issuance in the Microsoft Authenticator app. The callback is a webhook, a URL of a web API you develop and publish on the internet. The Verified ID service uses this webhook to send real-time updates on the issuance process, enabling your application to react dynamically as the user interacts with the Authenticator app. The state parameter is a handy way to pass a custom correlation value that the Verified ID service will echo back in subsequent calls to your callback endpoint. To keep your callback endpoint secure, in the request you include API key or authorization HTTP header. In this example, the API key header contains a secret that will be used by the callback endpoint to authorize the incoming requests. The claims and their associated values that will be included in the credential. For ID token int attestation, these claims are sourced from your application or database. In this example, the display name and the email will come from the Visitor Center database, whilst Alice uploads the photo to the application. For self-issued, presentations, verified employee, or ID token attestation types, their claims are populated from external sources, and therefore you should not specify claims in the issuance request JSON. Note the original photo is converted by the application into a string using base64 encoding. This is an example of issuance payload suitable for many common scenarios. However, the payload may change depending on the specific type of the credential you issue and its unique requirements. With the payload ready, the application calls the Verified ID issuance endpoint and passes the JSON payload in the HTTP request body. You can find the URL of the endpoint in the Issue a Credential page. Upon successful request, the Verified ID service responds with a JSON document. Here is an example of such a response. The request ID serves as a unique identifier for this specific issuance request. Think of it as a correlation key. It links your application's initial issuance request with all subsequent calls to the callback endpoint by the Verified ID service. Make sure to store the request ID in a temporary database, such as a distributed cache, and return it to your application. The application will use this ID later to check for the latest status of the issuance process and refresh the UI in real time, as we will show you soon. The URL is used to launch the Authenticator app, which is usually displayed as a QR code or a hyperlink by your application. It can also be shared by email or other communication channels. Keep in mind that URL is unique to this very specific issuance request, therefore cannot be used for any other requests. Great, now let's continue with the issuance user experience. The user now moves to using their mobile phone. So we split the screen into two parts. On the left side of the screen, controls the visitor center presenting a QR code and instructs the user to scan the QR code. On the right side of the screen is the user's mobile phone. Following the instructions, the user opens the Microsoft Authenticator app on their mobile phone. Then, select the Verified ID option. In the Authenticator app, the user selects the QR code icon and points the camera to the presented QR code. The application continuously receives updates from the Verified ID service at the callback endpoint. This allows the application to track the user's progress and visually update the progress indicator whenever an action like scanning a QR code is completed. Right now, the progress is 60% of the issuance flow is done. Back to the Authenticator app, it displays the name and the domain name of the organization who issues a credential, allowing users to trust and accept the newly verified ID. To continue, the user selects Next, and the new Contoso Visitor Pass credential is added to the Authenticator app. Users can select the verified ID credential to view its details. Before we move on to the presentation flow, let's take a quick look at the callback endpoint. The Verified ID service continuously updates the application through the callback endpoint. The request body contains important information such as the request ID of the initial request your application made to the Verified ID Issuance Request API. The request status can be referred as the event type, like the issuance successful, which means the user has completed the issuance flow successfully. There are other status indicators, for example when a user scans the QR code to begin the issuance flow. The state parameter contains the state value from the original request, as we explained. The callback endpoint should update your temporary database with the request ID, request status, and the state parameter. Using the request ID or the state parameter provided earlier to the client side, the client can pull the latest status and update the user interface in real time.
Next, let's talk about the presentation flow. Organizations can ask individuals to present their Verified ID credential regardless of how users obtain them and who issued them. We'll continue with the Contoso Visitor Center story. When Alice arrives at the Visitor Center, a digital kiosk stands in the lobby. She taps the screen to check in, which prompted her to scan a QR code. Similar to the issuance flow, under the hood, a call is made to the Verified ID presentation endpoint with the following payload. The DID authority of your Verified ID. It's always your DID authority, even if you expect credentials issued by other organizations. Under the registration, provide a client name to be displayed to the user in the Authenticator app so they can relate to the request to your application. Details about a callback endpoint, as we explained earlier. You may use the same callback endpoint for both issuance and presentation requests, or create separate endpoints. Then, a collection of requested credentials the individual needs to present. If multiple credentials are provided, the user is prompted to present all of the requested credentials. The type of credentials users should present, like visitor pass. The accepted issuers attribute is optional, however, an important one. It's a collection of DID authorities you trust. If their attribute is empty or not present, the request will accept credentials issued by any authority. To ensure that you only accept credentials you've issued, simply add your DID authority. To accept credentials from other organizations, be sure to include their DID authorities as well. Don't leave it empty unless there is a good reason, as this will result in trusting any issuer. In the configuration element, the validation element provides information about how the presented credentials should be validated. For example, revoked credentials should not be accepted. If a face check is required, the face check element specifies the source photo claim name and the required match confidence threshold. It is a percentage score that determines how closely a live selfie must match a photo on a user's verified ID for a successful verification. In this case, it's 70%. In scenarios where face check is not required, the face check element can be omitted in the presentation request. For example, visitors may need to complete the face check only for their first visit. Subsequent requests to open the door will not require this extra step. Additionally, the JSON payload may include constraints based on the attributes within the credential. For instance, users may be required to present a verified employee credential where the job title claim meets your criteria. For further details regarding the request payload, please consult our reference guide. With the payload ready, the application calls the verified ID presentation endpoint and passes the JSON payload. You can find the endpoint URL in the product documentation. Upon a successful request, the verified ID responds with a JSON document. The request ID that uniquely identifies this presentation request. You should update the temporary database and return the ID to your client app. The URL will be presented to the visitor as a QR code. Again, the URL may be distributed to the user through various communication channels like SMS or WhatsApp. Let's now continue with the presentation user experience. The user now moves to using their mobile phone. The left side of the screen presents the kiosk. The right side shows the user's mobile. Following the instructions, the user opens Microsoft Authenticator app, selects verified IDs, then selects the QR code icon and points the camera to the QR code presented by the Contoso Visitor Center. The verified ID service detects the user open the URL and notifies the callback endpoint, so the progress indicates 60% of the progress has been completed. The Authenticator app displays the name and domain of the organization who asked for the verified ID credential. Since in this demo, FaceCheck is required, therefore users will go through an extra step on the Authenticator app. FaceCheck adds a critical layer of trust by performing facial matching between the individual's real-time selfie and a photo stored in the verified ID. Finally, the user shares their credential to your application, and the callback endpoint receives a call with status set to presentation verified, indicating a successful completion. The kiosk instantly verifies her pass and welcome screen appears telling her she is checked in. The whole process was fast, easy, and completely self-service. Once the user completes their verification, the callback endpoint receives data regarding the presentation process. This includes the request ID that correlates the initial request you made to the verified ID presentation request API. The request status is set to presentation verified, and the associated state value as you have seen earlier. The JSON also securely delivers information about the verified ID credential shared by the user, like the issuer did authority, the type of the credential, the claims and their values, details about FaceCheck, and more, making them immediately available for your application's use. For more details, please read the presentation reference guide. Again, make sure to update the temporary database with this information so that the client can get the latest status of the presentation process and show the real-time progress in the UI.
The presentation flow we just demonstrated is based on verified ID credentials issued by your tenant. To request users to present credentials from other organizations, use the Microsoft Entra Verified ID network or the identity verification partners. To do so, from the menu, select the Overview link. In the Overview page, select Create a Verification Request. Then, click on the Select Issuers button. Select the type of the issuer, like Entra Verified ID network, and then search for the issuer using the organization's domain name. Finally, select the credentials you are interested in, and then Selected. Select Review to get a sample request of the JSON payload. Here you can find the credential type, the accepted issuers, and as a reminder, the deed authority always refers to your tenant. Even if a credential is not published on the Entra Verified ID network, you can still manually request the necessary details from the issuing organization, such as their deed authority, the credential type, or its manifest URL. As we wrap up today's session, we would like to leave you with some practical guidance. The request payload we presented covers most of the common attributes. We encourage you to explore the full issuance and presentation specification documents. There you will find detailed information on the HTTP request, including the endpoint URL, the request payload, and on optional attributes that you can further customize your issuance flow. For example, in the issuance request, you can use the Include QR Code Boolean attribute, sending this value to return the QR code directly in the response for the user to scan. If you omit it or set its value to false, your application needs to generate the QR code from the provided URL. As you read the documentation, you will also find sections dedicated to the successful response, error response, as well as callback events and callback errors of the issuance flow. Similarly, the presentation specification offers this information and also include optional attributes like the include QR code and include receipt. The include receipt attribute, if set to true, provides the original payload from the Microsoft Syndicator, which is useful for troubleshooting. So we recommend leaving it false for production use.
In this video, you'll learn how to integrate Microsoft Entra Verified ID into your own applications. We demonstrated a visitor pass scenario showing how an organization issues a verified ID credential that is later used to prove an individual's identity. We also explained how to request individuals to present credentials that have been published to the Entra Verified ID network.
To take this to the next level and implement your own verified ID solution, we encourage you to read our documentation, where you will find detailed guidance on how to set up your tenant, how to define a credential, issue and present credentials, and verified ID sample applications to get you started. And there are more videos and training materials available to you at aka.ms/vid/training. Thank you all for watching this video, and we will see you soon.